Good evening and welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show on this Friday, the 22nd of February 2019. As always, or almost always, I'm joined by my fellow co-panelists, Stop Spamming and Thunderous. Good evening, guys. How are you this good day?
Fine, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. Hi, Stops, and hi, Robs.
Stops is all quiet there. He's waiting to come out of the blocks.
Saying good evening, hello, welcome, salam alaikum, all the best to you.
Where is Stops? Who is this person and what have they done with Stops?
Stops alter ego.
Yes, indeed it is.
This is the real me.
Oh, that's so sweet. There you go. Maybe there's a new version of Stops here to entice some Muslims to join the show, and then let's see whether there's a Jekyll and Hyde that pops out or whether it's.
Now get a move on.
There you go. He's back now. Okay, so tonight we carry on with part 8 of Baqara, chapter 2 of the Qur'an. So we're going to be reading some verses, having a look to see if we can make any sense of this. If you're a Muslim and you want to join us, please make yourself known in the live chat. Ideally, you will need to message me on Google Hangouts or on Facebook. I will try and keep an eye on those, and I can send you a private link to join. And the question is being asked in the chat at the moment, which verse are we on? I think we're going to be starting at around 113. So Surah 2, 113 or 114. On or around.
Yeah, that's what we did last time, 113.
So there we go.
Okay,
so,
do I do the goodie of the day?
Yes, I was going to pass over to you. Go ahead.
The Prophet said the signs of now I'm sorry if I'm going to start laughing because this reminds me so much of this Kenny Boma guy. The signs of a hypocrite are 3. Whenever he speaks, he tells a lie. Whenever he promises, he always breaks his promise. And if you trust him, he proves to be dishonest.
So that's a goodie, is it? As in, like, it's a straightforward observation of certain people.
Definition. This is a definition of a hypocrite according to Islam, according to Muhammad. And I think this is a very good definition of a hypocrite. It's not really a definition of a hypocrite, but this is what in Islam a hypocrite could be. Because for me, a hypocrite is something different. A hypocrite is somebody who sort of pretends he is one thing or thinks one thing or believes one thing and does another. That in my eyes is a hypocrite. But in Islam, a hypocrite is somebody who lies and deceives others.
Yeah, fair enough with that. Cool. We don't have any crazy comments.
Sorry, bummer.
Today.
I was just corrected. You see, I accept corrections. Somebody just corrected me, and I will say, thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo. Arigato. Very thank you. It's bummer.
So you dropped out there, Stops.
Did I mute myself too quickly again?
Yeah, just leave mute off unless there's some background noise.
No, that's fine.
Cool. Okay. Good. So we had an interesting discussion, to say the least, last week. Do you want to say anything on that before we move on?
The thing is that we were talking about prayer last time, and the thing is we got into so much of this detailed and sideline discussions, which did not really help anymore with what it is that we were trying to convey regarding the description of prayer in the Quran. Now, if you read the Quran, it tells you that human beings and all jinn are created in order to worship their creator. It does not say what this worship actually is. So you need humans to come up with a description of what this worship is. And then humans have decided that prayer is part of this worship. Some people say anything that you do in connection with Allah and praising Allah or something is worship. But this is a human interpretation. So we need to look at why does this creator God, who creates humans with only one purpose, and that is to worship, not define what the worship is? And if it is the prayer, why does it not define what this prayer is either? So at the end of the day, it's not even the hadith, it's the human interpretation by the scholars who at the end of the day decide what this prayer is, how to pray, because even in the hadith, it is not described in a way that, for example, in the fiqh and the ruling and the jurisprudence, it is then being defined by humans. Because even in hadith, it doesn't describe it fully. And since the prayer seems to be the most important thing that we have in Islam, it is for me inconceivable that a creator God who is perfect will create a book which is the guidance for a person to attain salvation, leaving out the most important factor that is to be found in Islam. But this is the situation that we have. And we found this last time. We went to a lot of details and we saw that nowhere does it mention this. There's a lot of stuff like if you do it wrong, nobody really knows what happens if you do it wrong. So you cannot pray all your life, or you can even leave Islam if only at the age of 80 you go back to Islam and say, I repent, I'm so sorry, Allah, here I am, I'm your obedient servant. All your sins are wiped, your entire slate is wiped clean, and you are then a good Muslim in good standing. You have not gained all the rewards that the others have, sure, because you missed out on 80 years of being a Muslim. And you didn't pray, and you didn't go on Hajj, you didn't do any, but you're still a good Muslim without any negatives on your slate. So this is a very weird construct and weird situation that we came across last time that we were reading this.
I think it's also worth mentioning as well that when you look at the prayer as well, it's 5 times a day. You're prescribed what to say. So there's no emotion, there's no free will. There's no spontaneity about your communication with God. It's a scripted salutation, pre-scripted for you, that you repeat 5 times a day. So there's no connection there. It's nothing that we find in the previous text as well, within the Judean line of their relationship with God, or indeed the Christian line with God. In fact, Jesus himself condemns the repeating of the same words over and over again, parrot fashion, in the Sermon on the Mount. But also the fact that Allah wanted you to do 50, but Muhammad bargained him down to 5. So why would Allah want you to do 50 prayers? There'd be no time to sleep and eat and defecate and anything else in life, if that's what his intention was. But also the positions that you find in the Islamic namaz. The various positions that you're doing during the prayer are actually found in Zoroastrian customs called proskynesis. So that's interesting as to how that's got into the prayer as well. So that was, like a little recap of the discussions that we're having with reference to Islamic prayer as well.
Good. Indeed. So with that said, again, if you are just joining us, welcome. And if you are a Muslim and you want to come and join in, we'll be reading through from Surah, I think it's, we'll just recap on 113. So we'll go through Surah 2, 113 and onwards. So we'll read that. And if you want to join us to give us your perspective on these verses, then feel free to let yourself be known in the chat. Just I will actually, while I'm speaking to you now, I'll just copy and paste. It helps if you type in the Jinn&Tonic show as I'm doing now, because that will highlight it and let us know that you're speaking to us. My colleagues will maybe also have a look and check in the chat and see, and then you'd need to reach out to myself or one of them on Hangouts or Facebook so that you can get a link to join us. We're not going to post the link in the chat. We do get trolls joining. And by the way, trolls join all kinds of live Hangouts. I've been on Muslim Hangouts where we've had trolls join. So it's not always, we can't always say that it's Muslim trolls. There are just trolls in general that'll join and try and screw up a Hangout. So, and with that said as well, we understand that Google Hangouts will be retired, certainly from the general public. I think, as far as I understand, it's going to go to corporate only. So we'll be looking at other ways to live stream going forward. Good. Okay. So with all of that said, let us share the screen here and let's get going with the next verse here. Again, just let us know if you want to join, if you're a Muslim. If you're a non-Muslim and you want to join, let us know why, what specifically. We've already got 3 of us on. We don't want to crowd it specifically all with non-Muslims on. We want some Muslims as well. So there we go. Hopefully that's big enough. Oh, it's looking quite small on my screen. There we go. Is that big enough? Can you read it? Hopefully everybody can read that. Okay, let's go. So Surah 2, Ayah 113, Sahih International. The Jews say, quote, the Christians have nothing true to stand on. And the Christians say, the Jews have nothing true to stand on. Although they both recite the scripture, Thus the polytheists speak the same as their words, but Allah will judge between them on the day of resurrection concerning that over which they used to differ. So that was the verse that we finished on, if I remember correctly, from last week. So we'll leave that with the commentary that's been done and the discussion from last week. And we'll move on to 114. Sai International. And who are more unjust than those who prevent the name of Allah from being mentioned in his mosques and strive towards their destruction? It is not for them to enter them except in fear. It is not for them to enter them except in fear. Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. That doesn't make sense. From them in this world is disgrace, and they will have in the hereafter a great punishment.
Shall I just read that from the Yusuf Ali translation?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It says, and who is more unjust than he who forbids that in place for the worship of Allah, Allah's name should be celebrated, whose zeal is, in fact, to ruin them. It is not fitting that such should themselves enter them, except in fear. For them there is nothing but disgrace in this world, and in the world to come, an exceeding torment. I noticed in your translation it came up with the word mosque, and the Yusuf Ali we don't have the word mosque. So.
Yeah, I've got the Yusuf Ali on screen as well, so you might be able to see that as well. So I've got Corpus, Sai International, Yusuf Ali. Yes, it was mosque, wasn't it? His mosques.
Rashid Khalifa also does this.
But how many mosques were in existence at the time of this verse or poetic rhyme was being said or recited?
Well, it's not so much the mosque, because the word masjid actually refers to a place of worship, so it doesn't have to be a building.
True, but I think it comes up with the plural there, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, the place, just the places.
Yeah.
It gives the impression, though, when you're using the plurality that there are various, in where he is now, where is he now? Is he in Mecca here or is he in Medina here? When he's saying...
Well, I don't subscribe to that, so for me it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
We've also got the corpus at the top there, and you're right, it doesn't use the word mosque, so I think maybe that's a bit of a liberal interpretation there. I'm not a great fan of Sai International. Some Muslims present it. I think the only advantage perhaps is it may be, quote unquote, slightly easier to read compared to Yusuf Ali and so forth. But you're right, I think it's in my view here, reading other translations and speaking to Muslims as well, it's not as accurate, or it's perhaps been designed specifically for Western ears more so than traditional Muslims and so forth. Because what does it say in the corpus there? It strives for their destruction. The masjid, right? Okay, so it says the word masjid. So they've reinterpreted that as mosques.
Click on the roots, on where it says 30 roots, and you will see what word is actually being used there. And if it really does say masjid.
Yeah, there it is.
The masajid, the masajida. Okay, so then this is the place of worship, and it's not a building. So whatever you want to put there, it's up to you.
There's the point, you see. I mean, a place of worship could be anywhere designated at any one given time. It can just be an open space.
Yes.
In the middle of nowhere. But when you're using the word mosque, you're implying a dedicated building.
I don't think so. I think this is who is more unjust than those who prevent the name of Allah from being mentioned in the places of worship. So wherever a couple of Muslims congregate and they want to worship their God, then if somebody comes there and says, well, I want to prevent you from doing that, then this is the one who is unjust.
Well, having said that, those stops, I mean, they especially in the Western world and in some places where, you visited, they're doing it out in the streets. And so, again, if we as I think we should, especially in Western countries, prevent them from taking over the pavement and the roads and the rest, which is not designed for that. Are they going to then levy or level the same critique that, hey, you're preventing us from gathering for prayer? Well, that's not a place of prayer, is it? The street or the pavement or whatever the case is. The fact that many of you don't stand there doesn't make it a place of prayer.
Right, but what is in Thunderous' favor at the moment is it says strive towards their destruction. destruction of what? The masjid or the Muslims?
Yeah, exactly. In his mosque, and strive towards. So presumably, it's saying strive towards the destruction. So it's the non-Muslims or those who are preventing them. It's striving towards their destruction.
I think it's also worth mentioning here as well that I think I slightly touched on it last week with reference to the type of audience that you had there when we talk about the Christians and the Jews. You have two types of Jews there, the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox. But what I don't know, I stand to be corrected as to what kind of Christian audience he had there. And the reason why I mention this is because he talks about the name of Allah. Well, Allah doesn't have a name. Allah is certainly not a name, because Allah in Arabic parlance is merely the God, meaning the chief deity. And it's interesting because by now in the 6th century, the tradition of calling on the name of the God of the Bible, the Judeo-Christian God, now you can use the term Jehovah, or you can use the term Yahweh, or the abbreviation, which is Jah. But Muhammad doesn't know what it is, because the Jews have stopped using the name by then. Because it had become a tradition that using the name had become superstitious. So by the 6th century, they'd stopped using the name Jehovah or Yahweh, but Muhammad doesn't know what it is. It's interesting that the God's name in the Bible is there over 7,000 times between Genesis and Revelation, his literal name. You can translate it either way, but it's a name and it's there. Yet it doesn't appear once in the Quran. And why is that? Because Muhammad doesn't know what it is.
Yes, that's right. And we've got a comment in the, we've got the Muslim fellow commenting in the chat there. It doesn't seem like he wants to come in here. He's claiming that strive for their rune means those who prevent whoever maintain the masjids with Allah's remembrance and who visit Allah's house to perform Hajj and Umrah. Well, I don't know where you get all of that out of there, but okay. I mean, maybe that you can go there.
But the thing is, go live. I don't quite understand. You are now accusing us of making mistakes. We are only reading the Quran, for crying out loud. It's not us making a mistake. If this is an incompetent author who wrote this, this doesn't make us the ones making a mistake. If I am able to make a mistake when reading the Quran, it is the author who is making the mistake in not being able to articulate itself in a way that a normal human being like me can understand it. That's it. It's that easy. I am not making a mistake by reading that it's whatever it says there. If this God is too stupid to go and write something that is comprehensible and incapable of making me speak the language that it thinks it should be fit to convey these messages, then it is not my fault. It is the fault of the author. And we see very clearly that the author of this book cannot be a God.
I think it's also worth mentioning as well that if we go back at the time when these things were being revealed, it was just a man standing in front of another load of people who were probably sitting down or crouching down, picking sand from between their toes while he was saying this. So we're trying to put ourselves in a fly on the wall documentary point of view as to what we would understand while these verses were being revealed. What would we...
Exactly. And the Tafseer were written hundreds of years later. And this, we are not following a human being. We are not following what a human being tells us how to interpret this nonsense. We are reading this ourselves, and we are the ones who are being addressed, not the scholar who is writing a Tafseer. I am a normal human being with normal intelligence, normal brain, normal everything. And I'm reading this, and this is nonsense. So if I am a normal person reading this nonsense, thinks this is nonsense, how can anybody blame me for this? If the author creates this nonsense, how can I put some sense to it? You are saying now that I should go and read a Tafseer, which was written, I don't know when, by a human being. No, I do not follow a human being. I do not follow a scholar the way that a Muslim will do. I am somebody who uses the faculties being provided by biology. And this is my brain, and that's what I'm using. And my brain is telling me this is nonsense.
Well, I like the comment here. It's the typical unfalsifiable, comment. The kafir read the Quran without a sincere heart. Exactly what is a sincere heart? What is the methodology for uncovering a sincere heart, fast track? Can you give us the 1 to 5 steps that uncover that? And be careful, because I can do the same to you. So be careful with this sort of unfalsifiable, airy-fairy claim.
It's,
It's
it's,
not going
it's,
to do much.
it's a Muslim default that anybody that tries to challenge Islam is down to their heart condition. So if you don't accept it, if you don't agree with it, then the fault lies on the person that doesn't accept it. They're shifting the responsibility away from the literature that they follow, that they say is holy and scriptural and from God and from Muhammad. They're putting the onus on the person that's reading it and their reasons for why. For instance, you're not reading. I'm surprised thus far no one is saying, well, you're not reading it in Arabic, or you're taking it out of context, because those default arguments will soon come up.
Well, the problem with taking, saying you've got to read in Arabic, of course, is that nullifies everybody who's ever converted to Islam that didn't read Arabic. But of course, again, many Muslims, or I won't say many, at least the Muslims that I've spoken to when I've brought this up, they don't see that as a contradiction. Hey, you've got to read Arabic, you've got to understand Arabic to read it deeply, but people can easily convert in without understanding Arabic. And as we read through this, I'm really hard pressed I would be fascinated to find an English-speaking Muslim that has converted to Islam by virtue of reading this book and saying, I've got a clear understanding of this book, and because this book is just such an amazing book in terms of its ease to understand, and it's matching with the reality around me. I am, I couldn't not be convinced by this book alone. But what do we find with people who do convert in? That is just beyond their pale. I've tried to get a few converts on here, and I've spoken nicely, etc. But of course, they won't come on here, because all we have to do is ask them, what do they understand? Did you even read the Quran before you converted? And most of the time, the answer is, of course, no.
I think really, for me personally, I have like a scale of 1 to 10 as to where I put people's comments and Muslims' comments and Muslim opinions as to how I'm going to respond, if I'm going to respond to them at all. For instance, when a Muslim says you've got to read it in Arabic, to me, that's your level 1 Muslim there. That's level 1 intelligence. And then if he says, if he uses the word context, then it's all at 1.5. So you've gone to you don't read it in Arabic, and then you've said, no, you've taken it out of context. So you're up to 1.5 now. It's a bit like, in England, you have that for breathalyzer. If you're 15 points over whatever, then you've got an automatic ban. So, level of stupidity increases with the kind of default arguments that you're using when you're challenging people who are reading the Quran, and they're challenging what's being written inside the Quran. Like when a Christian or a Jew is reading the Quran, and then they'll start using default arguments like, oh, the Nicene Creed. Well, okay, then you've gone straight to level 5 for me. You're halfway already there just with that one comment by showing me how stupid you are by saying that.
But look, somebody's saying there are no mistakes in the Quran. Come on, please.
Then when someone says about the science of the Quran, right, you've gone straight to 9.5. One more comment and you're off the Richter scale, mate. So I think, to be honest with comments, you've got to look at the level of stupidity. It's a bit like what Bruce Lee said. It's a variation, and I haven't thought it out yet, where Bruce Lee said that a wise person can learn more from a stupid question than a stupid person can learn from a wise answer. And I think in this instance, with the religion of Islam and Sandiris, you can learn more about their level of stupidity by their level of reasoning of the defense they're using in trying to defend their faith.
It's fascinating. Yeah. You're right. You're obviously laughing at the comments.
You're reading the comments as I'm saying.
Yes. This is, again, we could just do a show on this all night, and it'll be just hilarious. Maybe we should do a Gin and Tonic read the comments show like once a week or something. I mean, maybe we get like 10,000 viewers on here, and just read comments and stuff.
Rob, you're getting the crazy comments right here on the show. Come on.
I know. It's fascinating. That the mindset that can actually say something like, you all love Islam, you can't stop thinking about Islam. I mean, just what's going on there? How are the neurons firing? It must be, if you could zoom in there with some kind of advanced scientific thing, you'd see mini nuclear explosions going off or something, and it just, short circuits all over the show. Where the rationality part of the mind is, that part is just, there's no power going to that part or something. I don't know. It's just fascinating to, but again, it's easy for people to accuse us of attacking low-hanging fruit. Unfortunately, we don't really get many people in here that want to have a serious discussion. Occasionally we do, but I mean, many of the commenters are just, let's just say that the rationale part of the brain is not fully developed, or if it is, maybe it's just not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, thunderstorm. If I now start talking about the God in the Bible, then am I now saying that the God of the Bible exists? Do I like the Bible now if I criticize the Bible? Do I love Hinduism if I criticize Hinduism? This is so stupid.
Anyway,
okay, let's go on. Let's go 115.
Let's move on. 115, yeah. I'll do Yusuf Ali again. Let's see if it's any better or not. We can always do both. Yusuf Ali 115. To Allah belong the east and the west. Whithersoever ye turn, there is the presence of Allah, for Allah is all-pervading, all-knowing. Now, this is good because I was having a conversation the other day. What do you guys understand? So we're all non-Muslims, but we're taking a serious look at this verse. What is your understanding? What does that tell you about Allah himself? If you were taking it seriously now and going, okay, what does that tell me about the attributes or the nature of this God?
Well, there's three things here. You have the face. So in other words, this anthropomorphism. Then you have the all-encompassing, which is all-pervading. And in the Khalifa, it's omnipresent. And then it's all-knowing. And that is the funny thing. You cannot have all-knowing because it excludes so many other things. And this renders the entire God impossible.
Now, the face thing is interesting. That's not in Yusuf Ali, but it is in the corpus and it is in Sahih International. So here they've got the presence of Allah instead of the face, but in corpus, which is, as you've quite rightly said, that's the direct English translation word for word. And then Sahih International, which is the modern, in some sense, less accurate, has actually got that word, but it's not in Yusuf Ali, interestingly enough. But I think the bigger thing is, as you say, it alludes to one of the attributes of this God, which is all-knowing or all-encompassing. And so at least here we've got 2115. If somebody does ask, well, where does it say in the Quran that God is all-knowing, or that Allah, rather, don't say God because that could refer to any God, but where is Allah all-knowing? Well, there we go. So 2115, for anybody who's watching, you can always point them there in case they think it's not, especially if you go down a route of having a discussion and then challenging, the omniscience or all-knowing of Allah, and then they want to back out and go, well, who says he's all-knowing? Well, your book does. Here it is. So,
if Allah has the east and the west, who has the north and the south?
Well, yes, that's
Krishna.
a good point. Yeah, and quite rightly as well that Allah has a face. And I was listening the other day, and there was this scholar who was debating Christian Prince, and he acknowledged that Allah does have a hand, two right hands, and a face, and other extremities, and so forth. So. There's some serious scholars apparently who do believe this is literal. This is not anthropomorphic. So that's interesting. I mean, maybe that's not the mainstream view. I don't know. Sorry?
Allegoric, you mean? It is anthropomorphic and it's not allegoric.
Well, yes. So that he actually has it. Is that right? Yeah.
You said it's not anthropomorphic.
Well, anthropomorphic is giving something that is non-human, human characteristics or something like that, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's what it is, isn't it?
Yes, but I think they go a step further, or at least some do, in that Allah can or does or has actually got some sort of a face as in, like if we could look upon this being of some kind, we would recognize something that you would label a face. So it's not just that they're saying it's like the breath of Allah. This is like something that you could recognize, apparently. I mean, I don't know how many scholars have you heard that stops at all or
Oh yeah, absolutely. But that makes it anthropomorphic.
Okay. I thought just giving it the appearance of human characteristics, but not actually saying that it does have the human feature. Okay, cool. Okay. Interesting. Good. Right. 116. They say, quote, Allah hath begotten a son. Glory be to him. Nay, to him belongs all that is in the heavens and on the earth. Everything renders worship to him. Oh, there was an unquote there. Go ahead there, Thunderous. I'm sure you'd want to say something about this one.
This will be something that comes out later on with reference to the Son of God. I mean, the Muslim brain has it that, well, for God to have a son, there must be a Mrs. God. The biblical narrative is, yes, the term Son of God is used there, but it's not literal. It's, how can I say, so Jesus refers to John and James as the sons of thunder. Does that mean some meteorological event took place and got a woman pregnant twice, and she gave birth to two boys, John and James, that were a byproduct of a meteorological event? Well, clearly not. It's used in terms of, in a figurative sense. Or I think in John 8:44, Jesus refers to the Pharisees as he's the father of the lie, like Satan gave birth to lies, like he got pregnant with lies and gave birth to lies. It's not. It's used in a figurative sense. To use it in our modern day language, if I turn around and said to somebody, and I do have, a nice car, and I said, yeah, my car's my baby, would people assume that I got a car pregnant and the pregnant car gave birth to the car that I've got? No, when you use a term, my baby and things like that, what are you doing? It's a word to or a dialogue to show an effect. It's an endearment. If I say to you, my car's my baby, I'm basically saying, how much of affection, well, not so much literal affection, but it's a term of endearment that I have a great appreciation, fondness for the car that I have. And that's not just me saying that. Many men are into motor machines will say the same thing about their motorbike, their car, their boat, or even, their house, maybe, whatever their hi-fi system. It's just a term of endearment. But the Muslim, because of Muhammad's small mind and small brain, he's taken it literal and not figurative. So when the Bible uses the term Son of God in reference to Jesus and God, it's a strong term of endearment. That's all.
Yeah.
It's not literal, but the Muslims are taking it literal. But this is the first verse in a number of verses that will be coming out later on, where the idea that God can't have a son, in the sense that God came down and got a woman pregnant. I mean, the ludicrousness of it.
Yeah, and obviously,
but how do you decide?
What's that?
How do you decide what is not literal and what is literal? So, I never understand what theists are telling me when they're saying, well, this is not to be taken literal. But then if you tell them, well, what about having sex with another man? Well, no, that is literal. That you're not allowed to do. So how do you decide?
I think it comes down to the intelligence of the person that's reading it. A normal intelligent person can tell the literal from the figurative. I think one of the greatest examples.
No, I can't.
You can't. Maybe with reference to, there's some people will go into reading something with a prejudice already there that they're not going to render it literal, or have made a decision for themselves. I'm not going to take this literal, or I'm not going to take this figurative, or I'm going to deliberately not, because I've got a prejudice against the idea of a holy book, so I'm not going to accept any response that's given to me.
No, it's not a prejudice. It's my expectation. I expect perfection from a perfect God.
Maybe it is.
I know this is me. This is my problem, that I expect perfection. Yes, I do.
But then you're basically saying that whatever literature you read has to come down on your terms, at your level. When we look at society in general, people are made up of all kinds of ages, all kinds of sexes, all kinds of levels of intelligence and competence. So a book has got to be written in such a way that's generalized that those from above the scale and those from below a certain scale can come to a mutual agreement as to what the text says. A great example of this would be Genesis chapter 3. I think it's verse 16, where God's talking to the servants and saying, I shall put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He'll bruise you in head and you'll bruise him in heel. Now, some people will say that I think it's the Christadelphians. I'll say that God is talking to a literal snake there. With anybody with any sense of intelligence, from the Jews all the way from before the first century all the way to the Christians in the first century, did not believe that God was talking to a literal snake. Yet some Christians today say that it is the case.
Okay, would it be possible to express this in a better way that everybody could understand it?
well, I understand it, and in fact, for thousands of years, many people from all kinds of creeds, nations, tribes, and tongues have understood it, that God was not talking to a literal snake.
No, Thunderous, you're wrong. They did not. Remember that the Bible was hidden. They were not able to read it. They were doing the same thing as what is happening with Muslims today. The Quran is being hidden from Muslims, and they are being told to go and read the tafseers and read the scholars and follow the scholars, obey the scholars, and look at human beings. And this is the same thing what happened to the Bible. For 2,000 years, people were not allowed to read the Bible.
I know what you're talking about. You'll remember, if you rewind what I said, I was talking about the Jews up until the 1st century did not believe that the snake was literal. And in the 1st century, the Christians did not believe that the snake was literal. That's
okay, but again, you're going back. No.
Of course I am. I'm going to go to the roots, aren't I?
I'm looking at my expectation.
Let me finish. And I certainly take you from a historical point of view that the churches deliberately had custodianship of the Bible, held it in a dead language, Latin, and therefore denied access to the greater majority of mankind to see what the words that were inside the pages were, to understand their meanings. They were the custodians and held custodianship of what the texts were, and therefore, going back to what Jesus said, we're teaching the commands of men as doctrines and not letting them have access to what the words actually were. I totally accept that, and as a result of that, errant doctrines came in and seeped in, and we can see that prevalent today within many Christian denominations.
Thunderous, it doesn't work.
Well, it clearly does, because history is on the side of the statement I've made.
No, it does not. It is a total, absolute failure.
Shall we move on, or shall we?
It failed left, right, and center. I just told you. My expectation is one of perfection.
Okay, in what way is it not perfect? Because you want literature to be met at your standard. In what you're suggesting is
this is not literature.
Stop. Are you a perfect person? Are you a perfect person?
Thunderous, this is building up a straw man. What I am talking about.
You said you want perfection. That must mean that you're implying that you are perfect. If you demanded perfection,
no,
you're demanding perfection. You must be a perfect person.
Because I am not perfect, I expect God. Because Thunderous, come on. If I am not perfect and a God is said to be perfect, then I expect to. Thunderous, please let me finish. I expect a God to be perfect if I am not perfect. So I should be able to recognize perfection. I should be able to see perfection if I read the Quran, if I read the Bible, if I read the Torah, if I read any one of these books that are supposedly coming from or being written, deceived, designed, whatever, by a God. I expect a higher level of literature than a human is able to produce. And we don't see this. I see a total failure where you have to go and tell me, well, the snake is not literal. It says snake, but it doesn't mean snake. It says snake there all the time. But if you read snake, don't put snake there, see something else. What is that something else? Well, whatever fits your fancy, whatever fits it to make it sound true, and whatever makes it sound better than what it is, because we realize today that snake is wrong, the same way as the steak in 273 in the Quran is wrong. Don't read steak in there. It must be something better than that. We need to go and put allegory in there to make it fit. And that is wrong. I expect perfection because I am not perfect. And that is why I think that any kind of God should be able to deliver perfection. That's my claim. That's my expectation.
Then read Revelation 12:9, because it says, down the great dragon was hurled, the original serpent, the one called devil and Satan. So the Bible answers the question. If only you'd got to the book of Genesis, Revelation, and read through enough, then you'll have found it. And the nation of Israel, at no point in 1,500 years of their history did they ever believe in a talking snake.
I don't give a fucking damn or fuck or anything about this. It's wrong.
Literature should be met at your level of understanding there. Because
it is. This is my expectation.
Well, history has shown you that more people understand it contrary to what you're saying. So there must be a default in or a fault in your level of understanding in comparison to the greater majority of mankind that have followed it in a figurative sense and not a literal one in the way that you're describing it.
Okay, the Bible is wrong the same way as the Quran is wrong, except that the Quran is even worse because there is nothing in the Quran that I have found to be true, where there are things in the Bible which do make sense if you read them in a geographical reality point of view. In the Quran, you don't even have that.
Well, let's stick with the Quran for now then.
Good idea.
Maybe we can do a separate show all on this. Anyway, right. Okay, so it's clear here.
Oh, atheists always swear. I'm sorry, you're a fucking idiot. Because I have Muslims tell me they are going to fuck my daughter, they're going to fuck my sister, they're going to fuck my mother. This is what Muslims tell me. So don't tell me that all atheists are always the ones swearing. Okay? Muslims have the same thing, and everybody has the right. There is no list that I'm aware of English words, parts of the English language that you're not supposed to be using. So at least here, we have free speech, and that's it. So I'm not saying anything that is attacking anyone personally. I'm just making some statements.
You know, I recommended a colleague at work listen to the show tonight.
Oh shit! Oh dear!
It has gone terribly wrong. It hasn't gone the way I thought it would have done. Oh well. Sorry about that. It's not normally like this.
Okay, so. Right, I just wanted to check nobody was trying to join. I've sent a link to Muhammad Islam, aka MStacks. So if you want to join MStacks, I've sent you the link. You can join here. So it seems to be that this verse is supposedly, and that's what one of the Muslims in the chat was also saying, that, you know, this is supposedly challenging the Christians, although it doesn't say the Christians, it's they, but presumably they refers to the Christians, and somehow you can work that out. I mean, again, would this verse not be clear if it said the Christians say? Because presumably it's not the Jews who's saying this. So, you know, the Christians say would be even more clear. But hey, again, we've got to be careful not asking for too much clarity in the Quran. You've just got to somehow know this, of course, without appealing to the tafseers or the hadiths or whatever. But this is a book made clear, of course. So clearly this is a verse that's supposedly telling us that, you know, this is not to be trusted. And obviously the Christians, as Thunderous has said, will challenge that view. But again, we need evidence for this. So if he's going to say that's not the case, then what's the evidence? So yeah, we shall see.
And the last thing is like really terrible. Everything is obedient. That is total nonsense. Okay, everything is like a rock.
Yeah,
this is crazy. Or the moon. The moon is not devoutly obedient. Neither is the rock. Neither is a cat. You know, this is nonsense.
Well, I suppose Stops. I mean, again, if we play devil's advocate there, in the sense that we normally understand, yes, I would certainly agree with you. But you could have a theist, or in this case, a Muslim, come along and say, hey, well, if God created the universe and the laws of physics, etc., then everything is in fact beholden to him because he set this all up, and so everything obeys certain laws of cause and effect and various other physical effects. So yes, in fact, everything does belong to him and does follow a certain path. And
no, that's fine.
But
I understand. But renders worship. Everything worships. This doesn't work.
Humbly obedient. Okay, so again, depends on the translation, I guess, though, because if you look at Corpus there, it says humbly obedient, which is probably actually more accurate than the worship him.
Can I just interject? When you're talking about worship and obedience, that's free will. Where you've got a choice to be obedient or disobedient, or where you've got a choice to worship or not worship. I'm going to go along with Stops on this one, because if Allah is making writing a book made clear and easy to understand, he would use the term everyone. But
yes, exactly.
Having said that, just to add on to that, in the book made clear and easy to understand, everybody is not worshipping Allah at this moment in time. They haven't done in the past, and they're not doing it now either. So,
but that's why I think we've got to be careful, though, Thunderous and Stops, to claim worship, because that's in this translation. Sahi doesn't say that, and Corpus doesn't say that. So they're saying obedient, but that could be read if we were being extremely charitable and playing devil's advocate, like I've said, as in everything is obedient in the sense that it follows laws of physics and cause and effect.
But with respect to that, but that was already been answered in the Book of Job. In the Book of Job, from chapter 27 onwards, I think it is, where it talks about all these patterns and motions that God has put in place within the physical realm with reference to those laws. So that's already been said, and the God of the Bible doesn't use obedient or those kind of terminologies where you know there's a choice there or free will.
Yeah, I mean, again, Muslims, I guess, could just argue, but this is the way that Allah chose to say it through Muhammad. Yes, you could say that.
He couldn't have said it through Muhammad because this was a book that was in heaven before anything else came into existence. So these words aren't Muhammad's words or said through Muhammad. They were already there. Muhammad was just a conduit for these words to come through, as was the angel Gabriel. They went from heaven next to Allah to Gabriel. Gabriel gave these very same words to Muhammad, and Muhammad gave them to where we've got today. So it wasn't just like for instance, like the old analogy of a manager giving a secretary an order and she writes it down in her own words what the order is. Like, can you write a letter to that person if they're saying, I'll come over tomorrow? And she writes in her own words that the manager's going to be meeting you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. This isn't like that. This is literal words that are already there, literally in heaven.
Yeah, sure, I agree that they're in heaven. But of course, the first time human beings heard them was through Muhammad, clearly, and he heard himself, I guess, or he heard it in his head, or whatever the case is. I just think they could make an argument, they meaning the Muslims could make an argument that humbly obedient is following the laws. Yes, you could argue that it's better clearly spelt out in Job, but presumably I haven't read Job for years. But they could make that argument and say, no, it's not actually that it worships him, but that everything is obedient to him in that it follows these laws, etc. I'm not sure that we could say that we could say no, that's absolute horseshit, or maybe you can. I don't know. I'm opening up to you guys. Could you present a knockdown argument against them saying that's what they take this to mean, and is that completely inaccurate, or is it just that it's just not clear? It could be more clearly spelt out, which I think is the recurring theme for virtually every verse in here. So that becomes trivial after a while.
I think we're having this discussion. The fact that we're having this discussion about this verse is indicative that the verse isn't made clear. Because if the verse was made clear, all of us would say, "Well, that's simple enough. Let's move on to the next verse."
Yeah, and of course, because there's so many translations and they do change as well. I mean, again, obviously, it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, so to speak, but this keeps coming up over and over again. And that's why every time, the more I read this, Muslims, the more they read it, the more they think it's from God. The more the rest of us read this, the more we think this can't possibly be from a God, given other claims. If the Muslim claim was that God is sending down this ambiguous book that takes incredible amount of time to try and understand, and only scholars that have studied for 25 years will get even some indication of this, and the rest of you will just have to accept what they say, then the Quran would be an exact match of that claim. But the claim that, as we keep talking about, exactly the opposite. So the Quran is just brilliant evidence against God possibly being able to write all of this in the way it has. Could this be any better? I mean, trivially so. I've done it before on a show. We could do it again, put a few words in here, and it would be much clearer than what it is now. But who are we to do that, of course? Because, hey, somebody from the 7th century claims that this came from God.
Assuming it existed.
Yes, or existed originally. Right, Yusuf Ali. To him is due the primal or origin of the heavens and the earth. When he decreeth a matter, he saith it to be, and it is. The originator of the heavens and the earth. When he decrees a matter, he only says to it be, and it is. Okay, so that's clearly where they get this. We've certainly done Speaker's Corner when I was speaking to Muslims. Hey, this is one of the verses, or this is what they obviously refer to with the be and it is, in terms of him creating the universe from nothing and wholly separate from himself, although I'm sure that'll come later.
But what I don't understand here is, if the pen has already written and described everything, how can it describe something that hasn't yet been told to be?
Let's just see. The originator of the heavens and the earth, when he decrees a matter, he only says be, and it is. So that's describing it he only says, that's describing it in the present tense, is it?
When he decrees, yes. When he says now to be, that's now, that's present. And it is present. So it's not when he said or something and it was, no, it is. And so if the pen wrote everything down and described it, it can't have been at that stage if it was created later. So there's an anachronism here.
Let's see. The originator of the heavens and the earth, when he decrees a matter, he only says to it be, and it is. I mean, that's just descriptive, though. Descriptive could have been written before or after. I mean, it's ambiguous, it seems to me. I mean, I could be wrong, but it seems like you could have written this before it ever happened, or you could have written this afterwards as a descriptor for that event. Or why
Oh,
stop?
when he, okay, I see what you mean. It could be in the past perfect, when you say, when he had decreed a matter, he only had to say to it be, and it was, which would be a better way of saying it. And then the pen would only describe what has already been decreed or has already been created. Okay, yeah, it's true. You can
I think
say that.
if you write it in the present tense like this, and you're saying that God is a temple, i.e. outside of time and space in the normal sense that we understand it, then that would seem to make sense. Because if you said had or will, then it might not be quite as
And 2 points on that as well. When it says like being is, I think he's using the illustration or the example of when he made the universe, but I think it's an ongoing process. Being is angels be, and then all of a sudden angels appear from the word of his mouth. There's no creative experience in this. It's like Shazam, boom, like a piece of magic. He says it, boom, it appears. Which is interesting, because if that's the case, then he couldn't have made Adam and Eve in the way that he described, because everything else is just says be and it is. Then how did he make Adam and Eve then? Why did he make Adam and Eve in the way that he did, separate to the way he made everything else?
Well, I mean, they were originally in heaven, right? Before they came to earth anyway, right?
Yeah. Well, and so were all of us. So were all of us.
Yeah.
Muslims. But the other thing, it goes in contradiction to what the Genesis account is, because the Genesis account talks about it could be many, many millions and billions of years that God was creating the universe before he got to the point of Adam and Eve. But here it's like instantaneous. So it's not consistent with the past.
Well, obviously they're claiming a miracle event here, because it doesn't match reality, science, or evolution or anything, which is of course why they're so anti-evolution. And even like I read, we were talking about it earlier on Discord, Yasser Qadhi, and I'll post a video, I gave it to somebody earlier today. There's a video with Yasser Qadhi basically saying that he fully accepts evolution apart from human evolution. Here it is. I'll actually give it to people who think that we're
I think Abdul Rahim Green says pretty much the same thing as well, that there is nothing wrong with it. You can make evolution fit with the Quranic pattern of creation.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to say hello, Muhammad. What is your understanding? But I see he's just dropped out again.
Oh, sorry, I can't see it at the moment. So if he does come in, welcome him. Stops just interrupt me.
I was just going to do that.
Oh, okay, right, cool. Yes, of course. Yasser Qadhi is not a Muslim. He used to be a Muslim. Oh, that's good to know. I'm sure he'll be fascinated to know that he's an ex-Muslim and he doesn't know it yet. By all means, pass that message on to him, and I'm sure he'll be thankful to know that he's an ex-Muslim and is unaware of it. Because of course you can't have progressive ex-Muslims. I understand why, because of course they have a great difficulty trying to square that with the Quran, but at least that's what we're aiming for as the next step, I suppose.
He also denies Alexander the Great is Dhul Qarnayn as well, so that could be another reason why he's not a Muslim anymore.
Yes. So, but again, ask for the evidence, and I think that would be a bit of a challenge. Yeah, cool. So, be and it is, huh? Okay. And again, oh, by the way, with this, I won't go in there. We can do that again another time.
By the way, if you look at the grammar, maybe we can come back to this, because at some later stage in the Quran, this grammar is actually going to be a mistake when it refers to Jesus. But we'll get back to that. So this is, if I'm talking about the grammatical error, then remember this is 2:117.
Okay, the grammatical error. So we can always come back to this.
Because here it says be and it is, and not be and it was.
Yeah, but again, I think, like I say, this can just be a descriptive act that is timeless. So the way it's written there, you could see as the better version of it being timeless. It could be read like this and put into any time frame before or after. Because if you did it with the past tense or the future tense, then I think that wouldn't look as good. If it hadn't happened or it had happened and you're saying, it's going to happen, then that would look a bit odd. But if you got it in the present tense, that seems to me, of the three tenses, that seems to be the better of the three. I'm not saying that's perfect, but it seems to me that's the better version.
I accept this. Yeah. But now substitute it with the word Jesus.
When he decrees a matter, he only says to Jesus, be and he is. How is that? What's wrong with that?
Be and he is.
Yeah. In other words,
is Jesus? Can Jesus is be?
Well, I mean, what he's saying, there's instant creation, but that again defies what the Bible says. And possibly what the Quran says. Again, we'd have to look and see if we can remember, because if he's saying be and it is, what is he referring to? Again, I suppose they could argue all they mean by that is be and the sperm is instantly, you know, the egg or whatever is instantly fertilized or whatever. You know, they could make something up. I think, you know, a Muslim could walk away and feel that he's answered this question, even however thinly. So the be and it is like, okay, so Allah sent down to Mary, you know, a sperm that obviously magically, miraculously appeared and fertilized her like instantly or thereabouts. And they could go, okay, there it is. What's the problem with that?
Okay. So you're saying the is here is not to be taken as is, but as existence.
Yes, yeah. So be and it is as in like, so
it exists.
Yeah. So I sent, essentially another way to say it could have been, I sent down to Mary a male sperm, and it instantly or virtually instantly, you know, created or was destined to create, because I know all things, destined to create, you know, the Prophet Jesus type of thing.
The only problem is that in Islam he no longer is, because he's not a part of any Trinity or Godhead or anything. He's just a normal man.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is that relevant to this verse, though?
No. I'm just saying that later on, when it says it is, there's a inconsistency in
let's see
the
when we get to
usage
that.
of the grammar there.
Okay,
so this is what I'm saying. Remember the grammar here.
Cool. Okay, 118. Yusuf Ali, say those without knowledge. Say those without knowledge. Is that say to those without knowledge or say those without knowledge? So is it those people who are without knowledge now speaking? Presumably, let's see. Why speaketh not Allah unto us? Yeah, so it's obviously those people without knowledge speaking now. Why speaketh not Allah unto us? Why cometh not unto us a sign? So said the people before them words of similar import. Their hearts alike. We have indeed made clear the signs unto any people who hold firmly to the faith in their hearts. Or Sahih International, those who do not know say, why does Allah not speak to us, or there come to us a sign? Thus spoke those before them like their words. Their hearts resemble each other. They have shown clearly the signs to the people who are certain in faith. So obviously this verse is again one that is often or a version of this, or you know, a summary of this is often given to us about how it's, you know, clear if you got the heart, and here's where the heart bit comes in, right? So if their hearts are alike, so you've got to be, because it was in the chat, right? You've got to have clear hearts. So of course, this is where it originates.
Yeah, but the thing as well, I think with this verse or this story, it's also talk about why Muhammad doesn't perform any miracles to prove his prophethood. Because if you go to the next verse kind of goes on to that as well, about why Muhammad had no miracles to prove his prophethood. Because if he was a prophet, that would be what the Jews and the Christians would be asking him. Where is your proof that you're a prophet? Where, you know, what are you providing as evidence? Where's the evidence?
Yes, so this is are you saying this is like a defense of, like he's relaying what these people are saying as in like a defense? Hey, that these people are saying this. Other people with similar import, similar hearts said the same thing, but in fact the signs are clear.
Well, if you look at it from the use file, it says there, those without knowledge say, why does not Allah speak to us? Or why does a sign not come to us? A sign. So first part of the verse, you've got the words. Then the second part, you've got the sign, which will be the miraculous portents to prove Muhammad's prophethood. So said the people before them words of similar import. To say the Jews and the Christians previously asked miracles of their prophets to prove that they were prophets.
Yeah.
Their hearts are alike. We have indeed made clear the signs for any people who hold firmly their faith in their hearts. Well, what has he done so far? The next verse. Or the next...
Wait. Stay with this one. It's very clear that, come on, he wrote his name into a watermelon. What more do you want?
You know, and there was that piece of wood that they found with Muhammad's name on it that was supposed to...
Exactly. What more are you expecting?
Yeah. We haven't got to the splitting of the moon yet, have we? But then that's yet to come in the Quran. So.
No, the problem that we have here is why doesn't speak Allah to us? And this is the problem in Islam and all these gods. They think that if you have a book, I mean, is there any God without a book? They always seem to say, well, I mean, you need to read the book and then you understand exactly what God is. So why do you need a book? Why not use telepathy? Use something better. I don't know, feed my brain with the facts instead of giving me a book.
Now, how do you spell mandatory? M-A-N?
Mandatory.
Sorry?
M-A-N-D-A-T.
D-A-T-R-Y, right?
Is it Tory? Mandatory. T-O-R.
Mandatory, yep.
So, well, basically what I'm asking here, this Go Live fella, Aki, without the Tafseer, they will get nowhere, but they intend to get anywhere. They intend to ridicule. So I've just asked the question there, of course. Go Live Media, is the Tafseer mandatory? Let's see if we have a response there.
Well, like I say, could a God do better? If a God has anything near omnipotence or is capable of everything, it should be able to put into my mind, here's me, this is me, okay? I want you to worship me, like the same way as you understand what every human understands what a smile is. So why don't I understand what a God is? I don't know what a God is.
Okay,
and
so
there's nobody who can explain it. So why can't God explain it?
You're unusually belligerent tonight, Stops. Is there a reason for that?
Well,
Am I?
Yes, you're
Okay.
unusually belligerent.
Let me just ask a question in the chat there. This Go Live Media is claiming it's mandatory. Okay, so the Quran, Go Live Media, just to be clear, because this is your inference, you need to think about your inference. If the Tafseer is mandatory, then the Quran is not a complete, clear, and concise book. It requires external validation.
From men.
How do you answer that?
From imperfect.
Presumably, if you're going to be consistent, you have to say yes, Rob. Sorry, what did you say, Thunderous?
From imperfect men, that Allah requires the help of imperfect men centuries later that only have the Quran and the Hadith to go by.
Exactly, that are interpreting it themselves. Could they be wrong? Then we'll get
Exactly.
silence here. Silence.
Okay.
It's because the language
my
is
expectation,
so rich.
Rob, the expectation is a God should not be limited to one single language.
Oh, Go
okay?
Live. This is where your rationality is, again, the part of your brain is not fully functional. It's because it's such a rich language.
Oh, bullshit.
That's why the Tafseers are mandatory, because God could not make this clear and concise enough for his supposed creation. It was so rich, it was beyond them, that it required certain special people living plenty of time after Muhammad died. Do you even think before you type this in, or is this just something that you regurgitate? I mean,
Rob, it's desperation.
I know.
Come on, Muslims have really, they've got such a difficult time at the moment because we've got the internet. We see all the inconsistencies. We see all the contradictions. We see all the mistakes. And these people don't have anything. So they need to go to arguments like this. This is the problem.
Go Live Media, come on the show. I'm inviting you on here so we can deal with your lack of rationality. I'm inviting you on here.
Yeah, but
I would come on your
do?
show if I wasn't muted or your people behaved themselves. And we've come on before, myself and Takia, and I don't know, maybe Thunderous has. And I'm inviting you on here. Come on here and give us a rationale for this. There's 500 words for the word sword in Arabic. Is that what Allah would want his people to have? 500 different meanings for one word. Clearly, you can work it out from the Quran here. And it should be straightforwardly clear anyway. But if you read other verses, as Stops and everybody else does as well, you can find out what a particular word means in a particular surah.
And the problem with this argument is that it shows how weak this God actually is in choosing Arabic, a totally weak language to make a very persistent, consistent, and defined point. It's impossible to have any kind of defined and precise meaning in any kind of sentence because Arabic is so incredibly weak in that, because there are so many different possibilities in having different meanings in one word. So if one word can have 50 meanings, that means that it's totally unsuitable for the delivery of such an important text. You could use any other language, and you could use Swahili, and Swahili would do a better job of explaining all these things to us humans than Arabic can, because there are so many different possibilities in the explanation and in the interpretation of the words.
Well, it's a bit like a lock, isn't it? A combination lock where you've got 4 options per combination. So if each number has or if each word here has 4 meanings, if you like, then the next word has 4 meanings, then the next word has 4 meanings, then the next word has 4 meanings. So that means a surah with only 4 words can have hundreds of variations as to what the actual translation means.
So this is actually a weakness argument.
Yes, it's so incredibly rich that you can't understand because of its richness. Okay, and that's a rational response. Okay.
No, it's a desperate response.
Anything else you want to say on this one?
No.
Okay, well, let's move on then, because I think Thunderous was interested in the next one as well. So let's bring that up. Yusuf Ali, verily we have sent thee in truth as a bearer of glad tidings and a warner. But of thee no question shall be asked of the companions of the blazing fire. Or Sahih International, hang on, let me just do this one as well. Indeed, we have sent you, O Muhammad, with the truth as the bringer of good tidings and a warner, and you will not be asked about the companions of hellfire.
So one question first has to ask is, why is Allah speaking to Muhammad here? We have sent you, Muhammad. Surely if this is a book made clear, easy to understand, it's been in heaven for millions and billions and trillions of years before it was recited to earth, surely the verse should have said there, we have sent Muhammad as a bearer of glad tidings, not we have sent you. So this is Allah speaking directly to Muhammad.
Yeah, I agree with you, Thunderous, that you could have put his name in there. They could always say "thee" refers to Muhammad, and that's fine. I think that would be. It seems to me, again, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm sometimes, because we don't have a Muslim on here, so I'm trying to play a little bit of devil's advocate and whatever the case is. But that might be a slightly trivial challenge against it, because "thee" would refer to Muhammad. It's very clear, blah blah blah. But I agree with you. If it was a book made perfectly clear, which is often the Muslim claim, then yes, the word would come in there.
And a book for all mankind. And bearing in mind, you see, this is a book that was in heaven for trillions of years before it came to earth. So why would this verse be rendered like this before it came to earth? It doesn't make sense. And also, as it's a continuation from 118, it says, surely we have sent in your truth as a bearer of good tidings and a warner. So basically, he's not come with miracles. He just came to warn with words. That's why he had no miracles. I didn't come here with miracles. I've come here with words to warn you. That's why I've come.
Yes, yeah. So he's basically coming here to avoid having to produce miracles.
Yeah, and it's like this is Allah speaking. Because I think it goes on later on where he talks about, well, they ignored the previous miracles. It didn't serve no purpose. That's why I have no miracles, because the miracles served no purpose in the past. They will serve no purpose now. So he's getting himself out of that situation of having to provide miracles of his prophethood.
Yeah. Stops, do you want to add something here?
Well, the thing is, this is just absolving Muhammad. So it doesn't matter what you tell people, some will not believe, and you will not be responsible for them.
And this companions of hellfire, or companions of blazing fire, who is he referring to there?
The non-believers.
Oh, okay, right.
So, and this is 119 talks about the blazing fire, and so we've read from verse 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 as 5 surahs or 5 ayahs, and we've had a threat mentioned twice.
Yeah.
So it's like every 4th or 5th verse, Allah has to threaten you with the hellfire for not accepting Muhammad.
But Rob has just been told that he's a pseudo-intellect.
Well, that's okay.
What's a pseudo-intellect?
From a pseudo-Muslim, no doubt.
What's a pseudo-intellect?
Somebody who pretends to be an intellect, which I've never claimed to be, an intellectual, but somebody like Reza Aslan would be a pseudo-intellectual. I don't
intellectual, but not an intellect.
Yeah. Obviously, they can't spell or can't type or communicate clearly or succinctly. But I've never claimed to be.
Okay, I'm just making fun of this.
Yeah,
even this they get wrong. Even something stupid they get wrong.
But I've never claimed to be. I'm just a guy
exactly
trying to work out what this book is saying. And it's easy for somebody who's already been spoon-fed things that are outside of the Quran to go, yeah, I know what this means because my sheikh said this and it's in the hadith and whatever else. But again, that goes back to this whole thing of this book is impossible or almost impossible to do on its own.
Exactly. And the thing is, they don't think about, I mean, if people do go to hell, if they prefer to go to hell instead of following what it says in this book, it shows how weak this is. Because we have 85, 90% of the human beings who will reject the contents of this book rather than go and accept it.
Or won't understand it as well. And even those that do claim to understand it, bring them on here. Those who are not scholars, some of the, the chatty people in the chat here, and let's see how well their rationality or their rationale for claiming what they claim about these verses stands up to us. We're not scholars even. Let's see how well they stand up to our scrutiny. But we don't get people on here. And when we've had them on in the past, as Thunderous pointed out, nice guy, Benny, I think, they start to seem to make up things, or they infer things
Yes,
that they don't have evidence for. So it's just like some kind of excuse that's coming up or rationale that doesn't have a basis. All you have to do is, okay, the reason I say X is because of this and that. And okay, and the reason why that's true is because of X and Y. Great, now we can follow the train. But we don't get that.
There's a very good definition. Pseudo-intellect, someone who thinks they know the complex meaning of Susudio in the song Susudio. I like it. That's nice.
That definitely can't be me then. Definitely can't be me.
Phil Collins, who the fuck thinks Phil? Oh, this is brilliant. I like this one. This is clever. This is really clever.
Right. Yeah, again, the companions of the blazing fire, for a moment I was like, okay, how does that work? And why would you use companions of the blazing fire as opposed to non-believers burning in hell, for example? Again,
this could be because it rhymes.
Oh, okay, maybe it's the Arabic rhyming.
It's the poetic
right,
form,
okay.
yeah.
Cool, okay.
Susudio.
2:120, Yusuf Ali. Never will the Jews or the Christians be satisfied with thee unless thou follow their form of religion. Say, the guidance of Allah, that is the only guidance. Wert thou to follow their desires after the knowledge thou hast, which hath reached thee, then thou wouldst find neither protector nor helper against Allah. Or Sahih International. And never will the Jews or Christians approve of you until you follow their religion. Say, indeed, the guidance of Allah is the only, well, only in inverted commas there, or in brackets, shall I say, is the only guidance. If you were to follow their desires after what has come to you of knowledge, you would have against Allah no protector or helper. So again, it's kind of a threat, isn't it? They will only believe if you follow what they say. But hey, I've given you this information, and if you were to go against it, then you would have no protection.
Yeah, but why? I thought Allah, according to chapter 1, sentence 1, is all merciful. So why would I need protection from Allah?
Well, because you presumably you've sinned, yeah, right?
Yeah, but He's all merciful.
Yes. What does all merciful actually mean in the context of the Quran? What does that mean? Because presumably then all merciful would mean that no justice would be required.
Yeah, but the thing is, with all merciful as well, you have to demonstrate mercy first before you can become merciful. You can't become merciful or be all merciful if you've never demonstrated mercy.
Well, I mean,
so when has this Allah demonstrated mercy for him to be all merciful? And we're saying all merciful, not just a little bit merciful, like he's selective with what he has forgiven or has shown mercy to. Where is there any demonstration of his mercy in all of this?
Do you know the 40 Qudsi hadith?
I remember buying it once, and then I just couldn't be bothered to read it, and I think I lent it to someone.
Okay, because if you go into the Qudsi hadith, if you read number 1, it actually explains that, because it says that I'm actually more merciful than I am full of wrath, or whatever English or American pronunciation. But it says that, and he says if you go at the end of the day, you will find me to be more merciful than anything else.
It's just words. You don't see any demonstration.
Yeah. Okay, true. Absolutely.
Although, having said that, though,
I don't want to get into a biblical argument with you, Stops, on this, but you're an atheist. I'm not. You don't believe in the Bible. I don't. Let's not argue about the Bible here. But from my recension, when I'm looking at the Bible, the example of the Bible, I'm actually seeing the God of the Bible demonstrate His mercy. This is the point I'm trying to make. With the God of the Quran, I'm not seeing any mercy. I'm seeing anything but mercy. We've read 6 surahs tonight, and in the first 5 surahs, we've had 2 threats of hellfire already.
Thunderous, I'm full of mercy, so I will not respond.
Well, although Thunderous, I think even from the Christian theology, though, from what I've heard anyway, God doesn't have to demonstrate an attribute for him to hold that attribute. So he can be all merciful. And this, again, I've heard this from Christians or other theologians, or I've certainly heard this anyway. Again, we could have that discussion. But just to add to what you're saying, somebody can have a attribute without it having yet been demonstrated.
I would totally challenge that statement.
Okay, cool.
I would say, well, I would need to see that in the scripture for that to be a demonstration. I couldn't just accept that. And the scriptures teach me to do that. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16 and 1 Corinthians 4:6. So I've got two scriptures that prove otherwise to any theologian what statement they make about God.
Okay, so even from a Christian point of view, you would have to say that God would need to demonstrate whatever the attribute that's being claimed in order for you to accept that that attribute is in fact an attribute.
A person can't make the claim of having an attribute without a demonstration of the attribute. Otherwise, it's just a statement, not a,
It is, but then they all are. They're just claims.
No, but I'm not sure that's the case. Because again, if you're accepting like a philosophical or a metaphysical approach where you claim, for example, let's say the being is all powerful, then from that you can logically deduce other abilities or attributes, and you don't need them explicitly stated. Again, if you accept that line of reasoning, if you don't, then obviously that's
there's no attribute in the biblical God that he states he has that he hasn't demonstrated anyway. That's the point. Every statement he's made about his personality and his psyche and his ability, he's demonstrated in the biblical recension. I don't find that with this God here. The God of the Bible doesn't make a statement, and I'm thinking, well, I haven't seen him say that, or I haven't seen him do that or demonstrate that. I haven't seen him do or demonstrate that yet. He's demonstrated everything so far. That's the whole point of your basis of faith, is the demonstration of, I think it's Hebrews 11:1, where it says, faith is the expectation of the demonstration of realities, though not yet beheld. Whereas with the God of the Quran, I'm not seeing anything here. I keep hearing that reading about this mercy, 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 all this, all that, and all the other. He's got 99 attributes, but, I don't see him ever demonstrating. The only one he seems to be going on about that he's very, proactive with is his threats of hellfire.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's no doubt about that.
I'm beginning to think, with 99, names, and then there's the one name that he has that nobody knows what it is. Only he himself knows. I don't want to go into. We digress there, but
yeah, because you're getting comments coming in about the Bible as well here now. We'd sidetrack on that.
This is a Quranic discussion.
Cool. So clear. It seems clear that that the Jews and Christians wouldn't be happy unless Muhammad followed them, but he's given a clear injunction not to follow them because he's got this knowledge that's come from Allah, and then he wouldn't have a protector.
They're not going to follow him because they're reading their scriptures and they can see him if they're following the Bible and the Genesis to Malachi for the Jews and Genesis to Revelation for the Christians, then they can see who he is, and that's why they're not accepting him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that this verse is more. Is this verse? So let me ask the question: is this verse more for Muhammad than anything else? And obviously the people who are reading it afterwards, so is this really an injunction or maybe a command or maybe a subtle sort of threat to Muhammad himself that don't be led astray, quote unquote, by the Jews and the Christians?
No, I don't. It won't be a threat because you have those. Remember when I did that presentation several months ago about Khadija being the true prophet of Islam, where Muhammad was getting all those sort of like suicidal thoughts and he thought he was a madman, and yet Allah seems to be very proactive in consoling Muhammad that he's not a madman, he's not going out of his mind, don't commit suicide. So it wouldn't be aimed at Muhammad because Muhammad's been in worse situations, when he wanted to commit suicide, and Allah was only too ready to try and console him. So this wouldn't be a threat against Muhammad. This would be a threat against the audience to not listen to the Jews and the Christians.
Okay, I see it as a continuation of 119, where he's a warner. He is warning people, don't believe the Jews and the Christians, otherwise you're going to have Allah against you. You don't want that, do you?
So he's warning not Allah, but the other people, so Allah's followers, in other words.
He's warning Allah's followers not to be beguiled or not to be convinced of what the Jews and the Christians tell you. So don't.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I understand.
Their religion. because otherwise you're going to have a huge enemy, which is Allah, and he's much more powerful than the other gods.
Yes, okay. Again, the words, again, yeah, okay, cool. Right. All right, let's move on. 121. Yusuf Ali, those to whom we sent the book study it as it should be studied. They are the ones that believe therein. Those who reject faith therein, the loss is their own. Or Sahih International, those whom we have given the book recited in its true recital. Those are the ones who believe it. And whoever disbelieves in it, they are the losers.
Oh boy,
Well,
there's
that's like
so much wrong here.
Like a trivial statement, isn't it, really?
No, the thing is that if you look at the facts, you will see that none of this makes sense, because apparently the Quran was revealed in different versions and different variants and different recital forms. You have the 7 plus the then you have the 26, then you have the 30. You have so many different variants, and all are correct according to Muhammad.
Yeah, which can't be the case, right? So if there are differences,
this is the contradiction here.
But again, Muslims go, especially at Speaker's Corner, and I'm sure elsewhere, attempt to go to great lengths to argue that in fact the Duri, the Wash, the Hafs Quran, etc., are all the same Quran. I mean, well, why would you have different names then? What's the point? And whatever is in there is so trivially different that it is the same. Which again, it depends how accurate you want to be, I guess.
And
it's
so
only
funny.
as accurate as
Loser.
Loss is their own.
The loser. It is they who are the losers. Then those, they are the losers. Reminds me so much of Jeremy Clarkson.
We've given the book with its true recital. How does one know what the true recital is?
Exactly. There you go. And this is the point, because now Muslims will say, well, the hadiths are there to explain the Quran. Okay, number one, why would the Quran require an explanation? And number two, how do you now follow the hadiths, and which one do you follow? Because they all say something different. You can't. It's impossible. This is the dilemma Muslims have. This is why they turn to the hadith, and then when they find the hadith go and contradict one another, they say, oh my God, I can't do anything. Then they have to wait for the scholars to give them the guidance required, and then you have the one who will say, well, I see this and this and this. I will take these sentences and create a little package which then says, well, this is the correct way. And another scholar then says, well, no, I think I will take this one and this one and this one and create this little package, and this is the correct one. And this is why then when this is when you hear the scholar for dollar. And this is exactly the way that it works, because it becomes a battle of the scholars who are paid money to have an opinion. And this is the problem.
Yeah, because one of the things obviously that's happening is there's a lot of confusion among Muslims as well, if they in fact start to read these things. Obviously, if they don't read the Quran and they just take what they're told, it's a much more difficult thing to be able to read and to do. And so, oops, have I lost presenting?
Yes. I don't know how you notice. I never noticed this. I have to have other people, and they say, oops, there's something wrong. And I always think, oh.
It somehow disappeared. Let me bring it back there again. I don't know what happened there.
I couldn't. I've tried this, and then it suddenly disappears, and then it doesn't come back.
Oh, dear. Yep, you're right. I wonder. I can't see it now. I've lost it, and I wanted to keep that on.
I had this too. Let me see if I can open another window.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the only one who can present, right? Or share. Maybe you guys can share screen. I don't know. Can you just try, either of you, just see if you can share screen there? Maybe I have to try and do it. Let's just see. Can we share screen? If I share screen, does that do anything? I'm sharing screen here, and either whether I share screen or share application. Let me just try something else here quickly. Sorry about this interruption. We have suddenly, it's just disappeared off.
Yeah, I've also had this.
And if I present this to everybody now, I'm presenting something else there. No. Okay. That's problematic because now people can't see what is being said, so that I have to, I guess, just trust that we read it.
Let me see if I can do this.
I'm going to put the link in here so that you can carry on. If you're watching this now,
Hang on. Got it.
okay.
Okay, there you go.
All right, brilliant. So Stops has got this up. Okay, so we're on. I'm going to read it on my side because I can't see your tiny writing there. Maybe you want to make the text Command or Control plus Stops just to make the text a bit bigger.
Yeah, I need to.
We're on 121, by the way.
Oh, okay.
121.
I can't go to the application now. There we go.
But you can't move it forward. There you go. 121.
Is it big enough?
Okay. So to move on to the, let's just have a quick look. Yeah, that's better. Okay, if you go to the next one for us, so 122 then.
Okay, O children of Israel, remember my favor which I have bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you over the worlds. Or Yusuf, O children of Israel, call to mind the special favor which I bestowed upon you, and that I preferred to you to all others. So at some stage, it seems that the Jews were the favored people of this God.
Yeah.
But he's using the term special favor, but I bet you he didn't know what the special favor was. like the word covenant. He keeps using the word covenant, but he doesn't explain what the covenant was. So yet again, when we discussed what was said previously, or what I said previously, he's using things or popular stories or the biggest stories of the traditions of the Jews and the Christians. He doesn't know what the details are. He just knows there's something there. There are certain phrases that, when they use them, they know what they're talking about. So when they're talking about, when the Jew's talking to a Jew about a covenant, they both know what the covenant is, what the details are. When it talks about like special favor, they'll both know what the special favor is. But to Muhammad, he's just using, he's just hearing the word covenant, he's just hearing the word special favor, but he doesn't know what the details are. So he's just saying, so yet again, it's that repetition of that very little that he knows, but he feels by repeating it, it will sound as though he does know what he's talking about.
Yeah. Now, quick question for you, Thunderous. At this time in the 7th century in Saudi Arabia, clearly there were Christians and Jews. To what degree was the Bible, or what degree were the text available for people to read or to understand at that stage?
As far for start, the Jews would certainly had some manuscripts of their own, but they wouldn't have. But by then, the tetragrammaton, as it was in Greek, and the Hebrew four consonants that spells out God's name would have been removed, and they would have substituted it with the word Lord, because the name of the deity, Yahweh or Jehovah, whichever one you want to pronounce, they become a tradition on them that it was superstitious to actually pronounce it, because they took a verse where it says to take the Lord's name in vain. They took it literal. So this is why Muhammad doesn't know God's name, because the Jews by then had removed it from their texts. As far as the Christians are concerned, I dare say, I wouldn't want to guess what text they had, but they must have had some texts in order to recognize Muhammad as a false prophet.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked you specifically is just would he have had access to any of this, or would it only have been word of mouth that he would have been hearing from the Jews and Christians?
Well, he keeps telling them to go to their text, go to their books, so he couldn't ask them to go to the books if there was their books to go to. Then he's also a traveling merchant. Well, prior to all his prophethood, he was a traveling salesman, so he would have had access to people who would have known the books on his sales routes.
Yeah, so there would have been something available.
And this is a man that's 40 years old at the time that all of this is happening. It
starts to happen. Yeah.
So so by now 40 years old, and he was being a traveling salesman for his boss, his wife Khadija. So he would have been exposed to the books, even though he couldn't read or write them himself. He would have known people, because remember there was the verse that we read a couple of weeks ago about don't sell your stories for a paltry price. He was buying the stories. There's the hadith, I think Stops brought out the reference to it, where there's a hadith that quotes him as he's all ears, he'll believe anything. So already we see the pattern. He was exposed to the stories, the text, or whatever text they had at the time. And remember as well, he must have been, because some of those texts, particularly from the Talmud, find their way into the Quran. So he would have been exposed to some text for the text stories to get into the Quran in the first place.
Yeah,
so
again,
the evidence is there to say there were books around at that time that he had access to, though he couldn't read them.
yeah, again, we're assuming that he did all of this as opposed to people afterward putting it together, right? So we're going with that narrative for the moment, as opposed to opposed to other alternatives, which would have been other people bringing this in afterwards. Yeah. Okay. So there.
Why are we going and saying I preferred you over the worlds automatically means I preferred you over other people?
You mean, are you questioning the translation?
No, I'm questioning us. It says there, I preferred you over the worlds, or I preferred you to all others. Why do we think that all worlds means all other people or belief systems?
Well, the corpus says over the worlds, right? So that's obviously the most accurate in this context, presumably.
So what does it mean over the worlds? This is my question, because why I automatically do the same thing. I think I preferred you over the other belief systems, but why would I say that the world is equal to belief system?
Again, I suppose, they could just say that was the rhyme of the time. Hey, that rhyme. that would have been the rhyme of the time, and people may have understood it over there. Who knows?
I think I'd never considered that. Never over 30 odd years. What you guys have brought out tonight, that when reading the English translation, and why certain words are used, it is precisely because of that, isn't it? It's because of the rhyme and poeticness of the Arabic language, that when you're translating, it doesn't make sense in English, hence why certain words don't make sense. But the message is still there, though. That doesn't detract from the message. A threat is still a threat is still a threat.
Yes, so just what it does do, though, is really scupper the idea that this is a clear, concise, and
text without a doubt.
Yeah, exactly. It really does throw a spanner in that works, because again, this could easily have been done in such a way, or you could have had, one in Arabic and one in other languages, or the other prophets supposedly that came could have duplicated word for word everything that Muhammad was supposedly said. So,
or no language. That's what I'm always maintaining. Why don't I get this via telepathy so that I know exactly what is being said here? And instead of using language, which is always prone to errors and interpretation.
Yeah, it's like, why don't you have this supposed fitra, fitna,
exactly.
Fitra, sorry, that's built in. So you had these instructions, quote unquote. That's what you get when you manufacture something. You say, if you think of, because they always bring up the example of, the phone or the whatever else there may be, or the car or whatever. You get an instruction manual with it. So out of the factory, you have the instruction manual on how to do things. Here you don't, supposedly. And so it comes in a form that's difficult to understand and read and so forth for the person who's trying to, follow or have a good life or whatever the case may be. But of course,
this is a Jedi, and not they will be helped, will they?
Yes. The Jedi language is not necessarily the clearest, and so even that's clear in this.
You can read this. Do you want to read this?
Which one? No, you could. You're doing a great job there. You can take over and read it. So that's 123. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm starting Yusuf Ali. Then guard yourselves against the day when one soul shall not avail another. I don't know what the fuck I'm reading here. Nor shall compensation be accepted from her. Nor shall intercession profit her. Nor shall anyone be helped. And then the guy said, well, from outside, because there's something missing.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, and fear a day when no soul will suffice for another soul at all, and no compensation will be accepted from it, the soul, nor will any intercession benefit it, nor will they be aided. I've got no idea what I'm reading. In the other version that I'm always reading here, beware of the day when no soul will help another soul, no ransom will be accepted, no intercession will be useful, and no one will be helped. I don't know.
Presumably,
Okay.
maybe, just a thought here, could this be referring to judgment? In other words, because is it possible that at that stage, other souls could be brought to speak with or on your behalf? I mean, that shouldn't be necessary, of course, because obviously everything would have, that the particular judger, or the judge in this case, would know everything. It wouldn't require witness testimony. But maybe, what else would it be referring to, do you think? Or is there something in the Tafseer? I can always have a quick look. Yeah, so guard against the day, fear the torment of the day of judgment, when no soul will avail anything. No unbelieving soul will be able to drive away anything from another unbelieving soul. And it is said that this means no righteous soul will be able to drive away anything from another righteous soul. Okay, so it is actually about judgment. Okay, there you go. Interesting.
No father will be able to drive away anything from his son. No son will be able to drive away Allah's punishment from his father. And this is the interesting part. Nor will compensation be accepted. In other words, there must have been people who thought they can pay their way out of it. Here the Quran is saying, no, you can't even pay for this. This is what the Catholics did until Luther came around. So paying something as a compensation. So if you sin, you need to repent, and you need to pray, and you need to make up for it, and you need to take the judgment on the day of judgment. But the funny thing is, it seems that people try to buy their way out, like some pagans did, or something, because there must have been something like this. And nobody can benefit any intercession. In other words, what is the point of having somebody else speak for you?
Well, this might have been borrowed, right? Stops from pagans, or maybe, I don't know whether it was in early Christianity or Judaism or anything with intercession and that sort of stuff. But it seems like it could well have been borrowed from somewhere else, right? And then just brought in for the heavenly judgment as well. Because, hey, at that time, what would have been the problem with that?
Okay, let's remember this for later.
Mm-hmm.
It will not benefit any intercession, because this is going to be important later on. I don't know if we can remember all these things, because we have another 60 chapters to go. Okay.
And can I just bring something up? In the Yusuf Ali translation, it uses the female neuter there, from her, nor shall intercession profit her, nor shall anyone be helped. I don't understand why the female neuter is mentioned.
Oh, maybe because they were less than a man. So referring to, a person who's less than, because obviously we've got the verses where, she's not of the same intellect and so forth. So again, talking about the worst of creation, i.e. the worst of humans, which wouldn't be males, right? So maybe that's why he's doing that.
But it is third person female singular and female indefinitive nominative noun. So they are all female, yeah.
So why
then suddenly it changes to third person male?
Yeah, so that's the point. Why have they changed it in their translation? There's obviously a reason why, because I dare say you guys have come across this already, where depending who's translating the Quran determines as to which bias they're going to put towards. Because the more newer translations of the Quran seem to be aiming at watering down the hardcore message of the traditional ones that are probably pre-1950. I don't know if you guys have ever come across that if you get an older Quran, the language is a lot more harsher, more determined. And in the later translations of the Quran, they're really trying their best to, like it says here, well, why would they change the neuter of the verb from it to from her to it?
Yeah, I think we could. Excuse me. I think we can see, as you say, over some translations in times gone by, there wouldn't have been any need to quote unquote neuter it or change it. And I think, like you say, maybe a collision with Western modernity, and even going back to Hubble's discovery of the expanding universe. At that stage, the translations, a number of them anyway, changed from vast expanse or vast space or whatever to expander or expanding, expanders, that sort of stuff. So. obviously the translations are changing, or some of them are at least, and Stops has got another one there, that are trying to keep up with the times, because obviously you have this Iron Age mythology that is clashing with Western or modern, certainly some modern ideas and so forth, and there's a mismatch like oil and water. So how do we change this to try and allow it to slide in? Again, most people won't read this, but those of us who do, the Sahih International one, or in this case the Yusuf Ali one, may or may not be better depending on your view.
Which is interesting, really, when you find Muslims turn around and say, well, you've got to read it in the Arabic. Well, if you go and read it in the Arabic, you're going to see it for the way that it really is. Like when you're talking about the expansion of the universe, or in here, the female neuter, then you will actually be more inclined to be repulsed by your read if you take the time to study the Arabic, to understand the Arabic, to read the Quran in Arabic. Surely you'd be more repulsed than if you're reading it in the translation.
Yeah, but you'd only be repulsed though if you had a sort of more updated, moral system and so forth, which you would only get, or more likely, should I say, you'd get if you were born in that sort of a country. If you were born in Saudi Arabia or whatever the case is, and you didn't have access to internet or other people that had those ideas, this would be perfectly acceptable, right? So I think,
the arguments that you get people that are on the internet now that say, oh, you don't read the Quran in Arabic. Well, actually, you want to be grateful that we don't read the Quran in Arabic, because if we did read the Quran in Arabic, we would see the faulty translation or the errant translation where you've tried to water down the real message of Allah that is in Arabic, that you're trying to water down so that people are not so repulsed by your Allah. Whereas now I can read it in Arabic, or I can read Arabic so I can see what Allah's really saying, and I'm really repulsed by it because I can really see what he's saying.
Yeah, and occasionally, when Christian Prince is doing this on his show, he will point out where they've done this and show, the translations that are either unintentionally or intentionally vague or incorrect or whatever the case is. But none of us understand Arabic, and so it's harder. I mean, I guess you can still do it, and Stops has done that a few times, but it's much harder when you're a native Arabic speaker and you know what it's supposed to say. Then you can pick up on some of these things. Cool. All right.
I just want to say I quite fancy a female soul. I'd like a female soul. Come on.
Hang on a minute, mate. You said you married an angel last week, remember?
Yeah, yeah, but I don't have a female soul.
Well, if you were lucky, you could have her. If there was such a thing as an afterlife, you could have her as your female partner from here on in, or from then on in as well.
This is what I just read in the chat, a threesome. So it's my angel and my soul and me.
Well, obviously it's just your soul, if you were to take the view.
Oh, goodness, I'm a dirty old man. Okay, let's go to 124. And remember that Abraham was tried. Okay, now we're switching to Abraham, okay? So we're going away from the Jews, we're going away from Muhammad, we're going to Abraham. And remember that Abraham was tried by his Lord with certain commands, which he fulfilled. No, he didn't. He said, I will make thee an imam to the nations. He pleaded, and also from my offspring. He answered, but my promise is not within the reach of evildoers. Sahih International. And when Abraham was tried by his Lord with commands and he fulfilled them, indeed, well, Allah said, indeed, I will make you a leader for the people. And of my descendants, my covenant does not include the wrongdoers. Okay, I don't know what this is. Let me try the Rashid Khalifa. Maybe this makes more sense. Recall that Abraham was put to the test by his Lord through certain commands, and he fulfilled them. No, he didn't.
Well, no.
God
Okay,
said,
well,
I'm appointing you an imam for the people. He said, also my descendants. He said, my covenant does not include. Okay, same bullshit.
I think this is a meaningless verse because the next verse is what he's trying to get at. This is just leading up to the next verse. He's trying to appeal to the Jews here again because he's setting up something next. So it's the next verse that we really should be looking at, not this one.
Okay,
so should we skip this?
I'd say stop.
Yeah, we can discuss this one, but it says there's certain commands. Yet again, he doesn't know what the commands are that God gave Abraham. So it's just that vague statement again, command, covenant, special favor. Yet again, there's no detail. It's just this open statement that he has no knowledge of the details of.
Yeah, I think that's a recurring theme. That's true. But Stops, you took issue with the fulfilled. Now again, if we were to take the Muslim view that that Allah is all knowing, then in fact everybody is fulfilling everything that is commanded of them, right? Or not commanded. I'll take away the command. It's not commanded though. That would be that might not be that word they probably wouldn't like. They would be fine with it in certain contexts and then not in others. But we are all fulfilling what Allah knows that we are going to do anyway. So in that sense we would, but not necessarily commanding, because as soon as you challenge them on omniscience and free will, then they step away and they won't use the word command. So got to be careful there, because if you do accept, then you could literally bring this verse in and say, hey, but he didn't fulfill the commands, because the command was to take the life of his son, right? And he didn't do that. Oh no, but God knew he wasn't going to do that. Oh well, okay, so then he couldn't, either he did fulfill the commands or he didn't. And if the Quran says he did fulfill them, that means that God knew exactly what he was going to do, commanded him, and he knew that his commands were going to be fulfilled. And does that only apply to him, or does it apply to everybody else according to the Quran?
Well, also, he was supposed to walk 1,000 kilometers down south and build the Kaaba in Mecca.
That's what we get into in the next verse.
So
Okay.
That's bullshit.
All right.
And then, indeed, I will make you a leader for the people. No, Abraham was not the leader of the Chinese people. Definitely not.
Well, were the Chinese around at the time?
Yes.
They were, right? Yeah, okay.
Or any people. Abraham wasn't a leader of any people. What people was Abraham leader of? He traveled with Lot, and then they split up from either side of the river. But he wasn't commander or a leader or anything like that. He was just a guy that had a big family, that's all.
Yeah, he was just a deluded fool. What are his descendants? Now, the descendants, this is interesting. It's Ishmael and Isaac, right? Now, my covenant does not include the wrongdoers. Now, are both Ishmael and Isaac wrongdoers?
No, I don't think it necessarily says that.
Exactly. So this sentence is
But
full of nonsense.
they weren't the only descendants on earth, right? So it could be. I mean, again, one could possibly argue that his descendants were fine, but the covenant does not include anybody who were wrongdoers, who may have been people who were not his descendants, for example. Again, maybe the Tafseer would be clear on that.
Well, let's quickly take a look. Allah then mentioned his favor upon Abraham, his close friend, saying, when his Lord tried Abraham, he commanded him to fulfill 10 traits. Where does this come from now? 5 in relation to his head, 5 to his body. And he fulfilled them. He complied. It is also said that, means with every single word he prayed to Allah, I have appointed you a leader for the mankind, a leader for mankind. And there Thunderous was very correct in saying, no way, Jose. Abraham said, make of my offspring vicegerents that people would emulate. And I said, with you, my promise to you, and the honor and mercy I bestowed him and included not wrongdoers from among you. He has also said that this means my covenant will not include the wrongdoers in the hereafter, but it will include them in this life. Sorry, I don't get this. Should we skip to the next one and see if that makes any more sense?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So remember, we made the house, this is the Kaaba probably, a place for this masjid probably, I don't know, a place of assembly for men and place of safety. Take ye the station of Abraham as a place of prayer. And we covenanted, with Abraham and Ishmael that they should sanctify my house for those who compass it round or use it as a retreat or bow or prostrate themselves therein in prayer.
There you go.
And that, just so you know, the Tafseer al-Jalalain says the house, the Kaaba, to be a place of visitation.
There is no other place it could have been other than the Kaaba.
And then when we appointed the house, the Kaaba, to be a place of visitation. Okay, so that was yeah, so this, you need to interpret this. It doesn't say so, even Sahih International. And when we made the house a place of return for the people and security. Yeah, but hang on, how many? Okay, doesn't matter. And take from the standing place of Abraham a place of prayer. And we charged Abraham and Ishmael, purify my house for those who perform tawaf and those who are staying for worship and those who bow and prostrate.
But again, you know, if you didn't know any of the history, and I only know a little bit about it, this making the Kaaba a place of visitation makes it sound as if, oh, they created this and built this and all the rest of it. And of course, is it not true that he went in there and got rid of all the other idols and everything else that was going on there and sort of took it over for himself? So it wasn't if it was made, you know, anew. It was, in a sense, stolen or taken over or whatever the case is. Or am I missing something?
He can't say too much because he's now inventing a story that has no history. He can't say too much. He can only be vague, hence why the details are very scant. Here's a matter of fact from a historical point of view. If there was any, first of all, no cartography, no trade route or anything mentioned Mecca. Mecca is unknown till after Muhammad's death. That's a historical fact. I mean, historians have written on that, and only a few people have actually written about it because they value their lives. You know, so you can't say too much about Mecca being non-existent pre-Muhammad because you know you need to write your last will and testament. So, but there is another line of you can use, and that is, if Mecca was truly anything to do with Abraham, the Jews would have fought hand over fist. They'll have spilt blood to keep custodianship of it. That just goes without saying. You've only got to look at the Middle East today. If the Kaaba had anything to do with the Jews would have had held custodianship up to today. They'll never let it go. The fact that the Jews don't even mention it, it is not mentioned once in the Bible, not from Moses all the way down to John the Revelator.
Okay, I was just chucked, so I don't know what the hell I'm doing now.
We got somebody else on now. Who's that? Oh, it's you again.
I was just chucked out. And I cannot find. Oh, goodness. Okay, can I stop presenting? Rob, can you stop me from presenting? Okay, I'm gone. So if I now try and present. I can't. Why can't I? Oh, God. Sometimes I hate technology, especially when it doesn't work. Thunderous, you can still hear me?
I can hear
No,
you.
you can't.
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Here's the Quran. Okay, now it's back.
But I don't know where Rob's gone.
No, he's muted himself. Maybe he's also been kicked. Because I got chucked out.
No, I think he put a note up. Gone for 5 minutes. I might have missed that, but I know I did see it a moment ago.
Oh, okay. Because at the moment I'm sharing, but I don't see the share. So now I can't screen share. So you'll have to screen share.
Something technical. I don't know what I'm doing there. I'll just read the Quran that you want me to read. I can read it from the Yusuf Ali anyway. So what do you
Yeah,
want?
I can do that, but it's I can't share the screen, so people can't really share. Okay, remember we made the house a place of assembly for men. Oh, we've done this. Okay, so 25 we've done.
Right, 26.
26. And remember, Abraham said, "My Lord, make this a city of peace, feed its people with fruits, such of them as believe in Allah and the last day." And he said, "And such as reject faith, for a while I will grant them their pleasure, but will soon drive them to the torment of fire, an evil destination." Okay, I don't really know what I'm reading here, I must admit, once again. And mentioned when Abraham said, "My Lord, make this a secure city and provide its people with fruits," whoever of them believes in Allah and the last day,
Thing is,
and whoever disbelieves, I will grant him enjoyment for a little, then I will force him to the punishment of the fire, and wretched is the destination. Now,
make this
Rashid, let me just do the Rashid Khalifa. We have rendered the shrine, the Kaaba, a focal point. And Lord, make this a peaceful land, provide its people with fruits, provide for those who believe in God and the last day. And then God says, I will also provide for those who disbelieve. I will let them enjoy temporarily, then commit them to the retribution of hell and a miserable destiny.
This should be the greatest city that's ever existed on earth, then.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, listen, what is this? I will grant him enjoyment for a little. In other words, I will grant them their pleasure, but will soon drive them to the torment of fire. So this is the biggest and greatest of all deceivers, because he's saying, well, okay, yes, I'm going to grant you this desire that you have, sure, but then I'm really going to screw you over.
Right, let me just read this correctly. It says, and remember Abraham said, my Lord, make this a city of peace and feed its people with fruits and such of them as believe in Allah in the last day. He said, is this now, who's the he there? Is this Allah? Said, yes, and such as reject faith for a while, I will grant them their pleasure, but will soon drive them to torment of fire and evil destination. So in effect, then Allah is now admitting He creates evil. He is responsible for evil. But soon. So when it says soon is a relative short period of time. So He's not even giving them an opportunity to repent or to change their mind. He's giving them a limited amount of time, and in that limited amount of time, we can just deduce it's only a short period of time at that. Soon drive them drive them. So he's proactive in this driving them, yeah?
Not a nice God. Not a nice God.
So what happened, Stops? Did you lose your screen share again?
Yeah.
Oh dear, apologies for that. We probably won't
come on,
much
not your
longer.
technology.
Yeah, so just come back there.
Okay. 126 shows what a capricious and
presumably this city, of course, what they're talking about is supposedly Mecca around the Kaaba. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, we don't know. You see, this is the problem.
Yeah, but they will accept
because the Kaaba is not said to be in Mecca. Lots of cities had Kaabas, and there is nothing in any text that in any way sort of provides evidence that it should be the Mecca that we're talking about. Even the Quran only mentions something called Mecca, which is not really the city. Mecca does not. I don't know if we need to go into this. I think everybody knows that Mecca as such did not exist. Okay, Mecca, the place, the geographical location, does not exist. So if you take the descriptions of the Hadith, of the Sirah, of the Quran, none of this in any way compares to Mecca. So nothing there's no valley, there's no stream, there's no neighboring valley, there's no olives, there's no grapes, there's nothing there. So all the geographical and agricultural claims that are made concerning Mecca in the various Islamic texts don't fit and don't match what we find in reality. So we know for a fact that Mecca is not the Mecca that we experience today, that we think what it has been made after 1,000 years, because before it was not like that.
And considering he was a tradesman as well, he'll be living on a trade route if he's a trader. But he's not living, this doesn't match. So Mecca can't be what it is if he's a trader not living on a trade route.
And now the problem comes in, because now the trade routes go through Petra, because the Nabateans 500 years earlier, they were the traders. They are the originators of the language. They are the originators of the traditions, of the culture, of everything. So it always goes back to the Nabateans. And now we get that the first mosques were scattered all over the show. There are some indications, like what Professor Gibson or Dr. Gibson said, that they all point towards, well, Petra. I don't agree with that, because they don't. And then you get, okay, you have different time periods. So you have, in the beginning, they point to somewhere close to Petra, somewhere in the region. Then you have 200 years or something where they don't point anywhere. And then you have consistency after that. But this is only in the 9th century, 9th, 10th century, when they start pointing towards what we know as Mecca today. So there's a lot of, I don't know, confusion around this. So, but the only thing we know for sure, for 100%, is that the Mecca that is described does not match the Mecca that we see. Okay, so that's sure. The rest is all speculation.
And invention.
And projection, yeah. Okay, so we see here that this God in Islam deceives people, making it seem that Mecca is Mecca and that they can do what they want, and then says, no, I'm going to give you the punishment that you deserve. You can go for a while, but don't worry, I'll catch up with you later. Okay, 127, as Abraham. So, and remember, Abraham and Ishmael raised the foundations of the house. Which house we don't know. We assume it's the Kaaba in Mecca. Our Lord, accept from us, for thou art the all-hearing and the all-knowing. Again, this insinuates that Allah has ears, that he can hear sound. And when Abraham was raising the foundations of the house, Ishmael with him, okay, there's something missing. So somebody inserted with him Ishmael, saying, our Lord, accept this from us. Indeed, you are the hearing, the knowing. Great. And Rashid Khalifa says, we have what? Abraham raised the foundations of the shrine together with Ishmael, and they prayed, our Lord, accept this from us. You are the hero, the omniscient. Now, this is quite funny, because they were given the task of building this, and then they say, accept this from us. Very strange.
Yeah, yeah. And there again, we've got the all-knowing. So, again, another reference if it's needed. But again, most Muslims accept that anyway, so that's fine.
Now, if we go to Al-Jalalain, Abraham raised up the foundations, the supports of the walls of the house, building the min al-bayt of the house is our semantically connected with raises up, and Ishmael, both of them saying, our Lord, receive this building from us. Truly, you are the hearing of words, the knowing of deeds. So there's nothing new there. Okay. Next.
Yep.
128. So we're still in Al-Baqarah. We're still in chapter 2, sentence 128. Our Lord, make of us Muslims. Now, this word Muslims doesn't exist, doesn't appear as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. Okay. Our Lord, make of us Muslims, bowing to thy, well, it says in brackets, will, and of our progeny, a people Muslim, bowing to thy will, and show us our place for the celebration of rites, and turn to us, for thou art the oft returning, most merciful.
Yeah, the roots don't talk about Muslims, so that's a interpretation.
So I remember correctly, our Lord, make us both submissive to you. Exactly. And from our offspring, a community submissive to you, and show us our ways of worship, and turn to us. Indeed, you are oft returning, the most merciful. So this is the corpus, the way. That's what the Quran actually says. Now, TDS gives us a translation from Corpus Quran, which I would imagine is very similar to this one, to the corpus that we have, because I think this is taken from the corpus. Okay, Rashid Khalifa says, our Lord, make us submitters to you, and from our descendants, let there be a community of submitters to you. Teach us the rights of our religion and redeem us. You are the Redeemer, most merciful.
Redeemer,
Okay.
what? If you're redeeming something, you're taking something away from somewhere, or you've put it in hock. For instance, if you do a bit of pawnbroking, like you've pawnbroked your ring at a pawnbroker's, then you go get it back. You in effect redeemed it. You've got it back. Yeah, that's what the word redeem means. You've gone and got something back that was yours. So if there's a petition there to be redeemed, I would like to know redeemed from what?
Sin.
But Muslims don't believe in sin, do they? They believe.
Well, they do. If you believe something else, if you are a polytheist, if you are a Christian or a Jew, you are living in sin.
Okay, but but what is their understanding of the word? Because the Jewish understanding of the word is clearly different from the Muslim.
Absolutely. Yeah, we know that they don't understand this. No. So what I understand from this is that if you're a Christian or a Jew, then you want to be actually a Muslim because you want to be in submission to this God or of this God, and you need to be shown the rites, the rituals, and you need to accept the repentance, because it's all about repentance. You need to repent, as long as you are Jewish or Christian, and then you become a Muslim and you're okay. And then you are accepting the repentance and you are merciful in accepting this, and then you make Muslims out of the people. So
there's something we missed in verse 127 as well. You'll notice it says, remember Abraham and Ishmael.
yeah.
Why do you think he mentions Ishmael and not Isaac?
No, because he's the wrong son, because he went off and created Christianity.
Well, or Judaism.
Or Judaism, yeah. Okay.
And he's the one that was sacrificed. So he can't use Isaac because the Jews have got him.
Yes.
So he use the other one that nobody knows anything about, because you only have, say, a couple of chapters of him in the book of Genesis.
Correct.
Very little. So this is where the Muslims are trying to create their own invented genealogy between Muhammad and Ishmael.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Ishmael.
Excellent. I forgot about that one, but it's a good point. Absolutely. Yes.
So, it's what you and I have been discussing before stops. He's molding or projecting these prophets in his image, or he's projecting his image onto them. He's creating, if you like, he's rewriting history in his own image using these.
Yeah, it's this one-upmanship.
Yeah. Or their life course has set a precedent or a pattern that he's going to fulfill. So whatever they've done or experienced, well, that's going to happen to him too.
Now, in this sequence, we've still got another 5 sentences. Rob, how long do you want to go?
I think, should we wrap it up now, or do you want to continue? I think let's wrap it up.
The next one is our Lord raised among the messengers. No, then it goes to then it gets heavy, because the next one requires a lot of explanation. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So let's wrap it up on 128.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to do us a hadith? So what we can do, instead of going to an after show here, which is a bit clunky and stuff like that, we can do one of two things. Either if people want to continue either talking about this topic or others, we can either put our Discord server in, or we can put Taqiyya watches. There's just more people in there at the moment. We haven't, started to do much of a push on our one. So maybe for tonight anyway, I'll send some people to Taqiyya watches thing. That's where I would normally go and have a bit of a chat afterwards, and you guys can join or not, as the case may be.
Okay.
So cool. If you've got a
yeah. And it's Bukhari 1, Book 2, number 13, narrated by Abu Huraira, of course. Allah's Apostle said, by him in whose hands my life is, none of you will have faith till he loves me more than his father and his children. And I think Thunderous will have a bit to say about this. So we don't say anything. All we are going to say, this is a straight, like nearly word for word copy.
Yeah, of Matthew 10, I think.
Yeah.
10:30. there's a difference in that, though. What Jesus is saying there, what Muhammad's saying here. There's a difference. Right.
I thought you'd like that.
You did that for me.
There you go.
Cool. On that note, I want to thank both of you, as always. Thanks, Thunderous. Thanks, Stops. Thank you to all of you who are viewing. We won't be doing an after show on Hangouts, but if you want to join, I have put the link, the Discord link. You just click on it. You can go there with your browser. You can download the app on Windows or Mac, or you can download the app on Android or iOS, and it allows you, because we are going to move towards this in the future, so it may be worth, if you want to continue following us and have conversations at other times when the show is not live, then I would suggest this is the platform. Many, many people are moving over to Discord now. Hangouts is becoming much quieter. There's just not many people on there anymore. So I'd encourage you to look at to look at Discord. Follow that link that goes to Kia Watchers one. And once Stops and I've got things sorted out, obviously we're going to move over to the Jinn&Tonic Discord server as well. So with that, thank you very much.
Which already exists. Okay, just as an information point, it already exists. It's just that we are not so active there yet, the way that we will be in future.
Yeah. We want to be active there every day. Because
But don't be confused if you go there and find it and there's nobody there.
Yeah, well, difficult to find. You might be able to find it, but you can't search in Discord, which is interesting. You've got to find or you've got to be invited to servers. So yes, there's Titans TV, there's Jinn&Tonic, there's the Kia Watch, there's various servers that I'm part of as well. Pio's in there, so if you're looking there on the channel, if you can't get hold of myself or Stops or Thunderous, Pio's in there. He's quite knowledgeable on Discord as well, and I'm sure there's many others. So with that, thank you very much. We'll be back next week.
Please give us a like before we leave.
Yeah, drop us a like there. We'll be back with part 9, I guess it is, next week, 8 p.m. UK time again. Thank you, guys, and good night for now.
Good night.
Good night.